A Russian doll of Boimlers.
A Tuvix of Boimlers.
Oh my gosh! You know what though? Let's say no. Hear me out. This is terrible. This is a terrible idea, but it would work, right? Let's say you have like mass casualties on a Star Trek ship.
Oh my gosh! And then you like teleport them from the remnants of the buffer.
Yeah,
and just try to bring a crew back.
Because there's like, I can't man this ship by myself. I need bodies. I need people here to run the ship. Now, I mean, you're gonna have a lot to you're also gonna have a lot of things to handle because of that. What you've done, because you're gonna have hundreds of people like going WTF. What did you do, bringing us back like that? But at least in the interim, you would have saved the ship. You know, then you can deal with
like a real
ethical crisis.
Year of Hell move.
So thankfully, DS9 does explain why people don't do that, because there's a transporter buffer. So when somebody's teleported, they are saved. They have to be saved in a computer, but it's only for a very, very short amount of time.
Let's say like a YouTube video.
Yeah, it's basically a YouTube video.
Streaming. So they're the Netflix of space.
It was 90s techno babble, Kyle. Cut him some slack.
Well, and speaking of 90s techno babble, this is Red Shirt Rejects, where we're talking about, Star Trek nonsense. I'm one of the hosts, Kyle Nelson.
And I'm the other host that they don't like to talk about, Trevor Law.
Yeah, and I'm your producer, Commander Ship. We don't like to talk about you, Trevor?
No, not after the incident. Which, I still maintain that I just didn't have the rules of that pumpkin carving contest explained more explicitly.
That's going to leave everyone with more questions than they came into with this podcast.
That's good. You always want to leave them more. You want to like it's not about answering questions. It's about the mystery.
Would you say that this mystery is package shaped, parcel shaped?
Yes, I would. Kenny didn't pick up on it right away, but Kyle did.
Well, speaking of J.J. Abrams-sized mystery boxes, today we'll be talking about Star Trek Beyond.
Star Trek Beyond.
The last of our Trek movies in the Trek movie marathon retrospective reviews.
And paradoxically, the most forgotten one.
Yeah, in a weird way, it's kind of the one that everybody's like, oh yeah, that one, that movie that came out.
That movie does exist.
And no one really has that many notes or complaints or thoughts about it. They're just like, oh yeah, that one. Or they're like, oh yeah, I didn't get a chance to see that one. Or something to that effect.
Yeah, I blame Paramount for that. I think they also forgot about it.
They did.
God, marketing. Yeah, it's non-existent.
All right, so we're talking about Star Trek Beyond, a forgotten movie. I think we should start off with the failure in marketing for this movie.
Absolutely.
Because as a diehard Star Trek fan, I barely knew anything about it after it came out. And I was just like, I don't think I even got a chance to see it in theaters. It was like, it was there and it was gone.
Yeah, it didn't stay very long. I'm pulling up its box office right now.
Does anyone know why Paramount, was it part of the split between CBS and Paramount? What was the deal? Why was this movie not marketed? Because it's got a good cast. It's got a Fast and Furious director.
It was also released on the 50th anniversary of Star Trek.
Yeah, and I don't understand why this movie. It would not have been hard to market it. And
so execs can get into that gun shy spot. It is very dumb. I can understand the cut your losses ideology to a point. It's like, why are we going to sink any more marketing money into this to make, if we feel like it's going to bomb? Right, which is obviously not the case of this movie. This doesn't have any indicators that it's going to be, like Batman versus Superman. Whenever you see a trailer or TV spot come out that tells you the story of the movie, that's usually an indicator that the execs and the marketing team have given up on that film, and they're just trying to give you anything that will get butts in seats. But that didn't happen here, and that's not an indicator that this was going to be bad. But everything else, what I just said, is assuming that you've put marketing into this to begin with. And they hadn't even given it the initial push and seed that this movie deserved, in that layout. Like, I apologize, I should have pulled up the timeline from when the first trailer came out. But it was extremely late. It was extremely late for the first trailer to come out, and then obviously like subsequent trailers and TV spots in the summer. So again, was it a busy 2016? Yeah, there was a lot coming out during that, but not enough to warrant not giving us the benefit that it needed.
Okay.
Yeah. There's two statements that Simon Pegg made about this in 2018 that if you do a light Google like I just did, that'll sort of pop up part of the problem. And so he points to two things. One, I think it was poorly marketed, to be honest. If you look at the film like Suicide Squad, that was around for such a long time before it finally came out, and people were so aware of it, whereas Star Trek Beyond, it felt too late before they started marketing their push, or started their marketing push. It still did great business, but with disappointing compared to Into Darkness. He also said, I was really angry about that because there was like the one trailer that they released and it had sabotage in the trailer. And he said, I was really angry about that because it used sabotage, which was our surprise moment in the end. It was supposed to be a very fun, heightened twist and something that was a big surprise, and they blew it in the first trailer, which really annoyed me. They also made the film look like a boneheaded action film. And they were scared, I think, of mentioning 50th anniversary. It was a fumbling thing. They didn't know what to do with it, and it's a real shame. But I came away with it really, really happy and very proud of it.
That's so why even make it if you're whatever?
No, I'm not sure. Like, I've never really found a satisfactory answer as to why this was the thing. Like, sometimes stuff like this honestly can come down to pettiness. It can, because obviously Abrams had left this to go make Star Wars for Disney. And they were not coming out I don't think they were coming out the same year. When did Force Awakens come out?
2015.
This was right after that, or the year after.
So, obviously it was still Bad Robot making it, and Abrams is still producing it, but he's doing it under Paramount. And, who knows? It could just be a simple pettiness that they felt slighted because he had left, abandoned this franchise to go do that.
So we will waste money on this movie.
Yeah,
that'll
it could
show
be.
him.
And you can't even blame the other. I was gonna say marketing could be positive. I use Batman versus Superman as an example, but that came out in March or it was April of that year as well, and maybe that was the thing that got them gun shy. But you can't even. That would really have nothing to do with production, so it would only affect the marketing. Suicide Squad, we didn't know yet was going to be the disaster that it was, and there was quite a few summer stinkers there, but still nothing that really. A lot of things made their money back. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it also could just be that they felt like it would have been throwing good money after bad, because if you look at the progression of the market versus the progression of the earnings of these movies, so 2009 worldwide was $385 million. For 2009, that's pretty solid. That's not great, but this is Marvel has only just gotten started with Iron Man, which I think made a comparable amount of money. Then you go to Into Darkness, which is a little bit more. They're $467 million. They really expected Into Darkness to be if not a $1 billion movie, they were really gunning for it to make double the amount of money that they ended up making.
Well, it shouldn't have been a dumb nonsense movie.
Well, it's a Star Trek movie. You're not going to make $1 billion as a Star Trek movie. I just do not care how good of a movie it is. It will not make that much money. It's just not. It's not the franchise for that. And then, this one is only 343. And maybe they thought initially that when they're bringing in Justin Lin to replace Roberto Orci, who we discussed in the prior episode, had been signed on to do this movie and ended up leaving because of a lot of reasons. They bring in Justin Lin, the Fast and the Furious guy, the guy who saved the Fast and the Furious franchise, and made it the franchise that it is today. Maybe they're thinking, we bring this guy in, he puts a little bit of his magic on it, makes us a good movie, and maybe we make $700 million, and then we can just launch this into our own Fast franchise or something like that. Get some juice back in it. And then they saw it. And they realized it was a Star Trek movie. They used the word inertial dampeners in this. They made the mistake of giving a Star Trek movie to a Trekkie, is what happened.
And that's something that it is for me as a Star Trek fan. My favorite thing about this movie is, more than any of the other new Trek movies, and even some of the TNG movies, it feels super grounded in the world of Star Trek. It feels like it's part of that universe and is actually building on things that have done. There are Enterprise references, multiple Enterprise references in this movie. No one references an Enterprise.
So if you go to Memory Alpha and you look at Star Trek Beyond's entry, they actually have a continuity entry in it, which is not something they normally have with a lot of these movies. But if you look at their continuity entry, it is extensive. They don't just... That's actually one of my highlights of this movie, is because especially after Into Darkness, which is just not only is it needless fan service, it's kind of insulting fan service. It's oh, look, you nerds really like this, don't you? Look, it's Khan. Is it cool? Do you like it?
Have anybody seen the South Park season with member berries?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's member berries. It's member Chewbacca. I member Chewbacca. Member Khan. I member Khan.
But if you go to, say, the continuity entry and you just go through and look at everything, there's so many ridiculous little continuity details that this movie gets right that none of the others get. And that's what I like. You get these universe references, but they're subtle. They're not overhanded. Let's say one of the points that they bring up in this, this is one of the more overt ones in my opinion, but still not one of those that a lot of people are going to know the reference to. And it says, one of the many stories of the Franklin's fate involved a giant green hand. This could be an homage to the TOS who mourns for Adonis. A giant green hand also appears in the end credits of the film. Then there's another one where it's
the USS, the Franklin is not a US, is an NX class, is an NX dash class, which is what Earth's forces used before they became part of the Federation. The Makos are a running B plot in season 3 of Enterprise. There's just
yeah, and the drink that McCoy dismisses when he finds Kirk drinking his Saurian brandy, the preferred drink Kirk and McCoy drink in the original series. So it's all of these really subtle things that they're not hitting you over the head with them. It's just texture in the story that references the fact that there is a history here and a continuity.
This is a deep and vibrant universe where things have happened. Mm-hmm. And for a movie that everybody seems to think is, and even to myself, I catch myself doing this as a dumb action movie. It is very thoughtful.
Well, it's just I feel there's really good nuts and bolts filmmaking to this. So I complain a lot about some of the things that Abrams does that really irritates me. And Justin Lin, the director in this, does not do those things at all. And one of the things that I think underlines this the most to me is the in the action sequences. So there are several big action set piece sequences in this film, but he does a really good job of giving us and establishing the geography of where all of these things take place. And when he does these, like say the running fight in the wreckage of the Enterprise,
that one was really good.
He does a really good job, and these are very confusing sequences where things are not flat. Things are like upside down and sideways, and they're just in wonky, weird positions. And he does a really good job of giving us the geography of what's happening so we understand where people are in respect to each other and the dangers inherent to this wreckage, so that it helps heighten that tension. Like there's no choppy editing or crazy nonsense that really confuses how things are happening, so we can actually know where things are. Like we understand that the Enterprise is during this, and during parts of it it's flipping over, and we know that things are moving and changing around, and as they're moving through the corridors, the camera comes outside and sort of pans over the corridor that they're running through, so we can see in context with everything else where they're at. And he does this consistently throughout the film, like during the final sequence where the Franklin is chasing the other drones through the Yorktown. And it's this really crazy, like helix space station shape where like gravity isn't relative to up. There's no relative up or down really, or there is, but it's like weird rules. And so it's really confusing, and it would normally be confusing, I think, in the hands of a less adept like editor and director, but they do a really good job of cutting it all together and making it all make sense, and you know where things are, and that just sort of happens throughout the whole thing, like even down to the way that they close arcs in the movie. They're closing them in the proper order. They're establishing a thing and then they're paying off the thing later, and they're doing it in such a way that it's just easy for us to understand what's happening. Like it's great. Like some Marvel movies don't do this well.
It's true. As we might find out next week with
Right.
a particular movie.
Reading the Eternals reviews. Oh, God. Oh, boy.
Oh, man.
It never fails if I'm interested in seeing a movie.
I mean, just like download the weird Jack Kirby stuff just straight into my arms. Just like put it in my veins. It doesn't need to make sense. It never made sense before. I don't try to make it make sense. You'll just make it worse and it'll lose its luster.
All right, we need to no more Marvel Eternals talk.
All right. So, what were some of your standouts?
So probably my favorite part of the movie was McCoy and Bones on the planet. Their
Spock
whole
and Bones.
Yeah. Did I say McCoy and Bones?
Yeah.
You did.
It's
Unfortunate.
We know what you mean.
Unfortunate.
Well, we did because we saw the movie.
Spock and Bones. Them on the planet, and it shows like Spock is not in the best place because he almost died and had a giant jagged piece of metal next to his
Well, and
heart.
also like he broke up with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And his future self / surrogate father figure / the projections of his hopes and dreams just died.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot going on. Even
He's got a lot.
Gets, like,
He's not in the best place, and Bones is simultaneously a very helpful person to vent off and the worst person imaginable.
Specifically for Spock.
Yeah, no, for anyone. I don't think.
Kirk does it all the time, though.
Yeah, it's worse. It's worse for Spock. For sure, it's worse for Spock being in that position. But I'm not disagreeing with you that it'd be rough for anyone trying to talk to McCoy about your feelings and things that are happening. But specifically for Spock.
You've got Spock laughing because he's got no control over his emotions. From the surprise, I thought the surprise. He said surprising you would make it easier, and he's like, "That's bullshit."
Yeah, I can tell you from your using some of your crude vernacular that is horseshit.
Oh God, I can only imagine that pain. And I'm pretty sure if he was a human being, he would have passed out from the pain.
He would have died. No, he would have just bled out. Like he would have
Yeah.
died. There's no. I mean, that thing was huge and it was buried quite deep.
Yeah. And he was not, like, Spock's not fully 100% for the rest of the movie.
What frustrates me, and it's not this movie's fault. This would have been really great after the first movie, after Star Trek '09, because the things he's dealing with being in the captain's chair in this film, I still think it's a logical conclusion off of Into Darkness. Don't get me wrong. I think that's still that's the hand you're dealt. You work off of it. But if we could let me just pop Into Darkness out of my mind for a second. Oh, Kirk's when he says like I've done this on a dare, and I'm trying to figure out why am I still here? The days are getting longer and longer. I'm seeing the crew having their variety of interactions. Like I really love that montage. I'm going to talk about that. And I'm like, this is great. I get where Kirk's headspace is heading into this fight. He's not completely there. Like he's still going to be Kirk, and he's still going to figure, use his wills and figure it out. But he's not quite the assured man that we had going into '09, or the guy that came out of '09. That was I got this.
Well, and considering he didn't learn anything Into Darkness, like it also just kind of makes sense.
Into Darkness taught Kirk that he is always fundamentally right, regardless of if he's on the right side or the wrong side of the wall.
But yeah, I do agree. It is like this is a good. The way where they place all of the characters is a really good spot. I think based off of either movie, but it does feel like this would have been a really good follow-up to '09 with that. Instead of essentially rehashing everything from '09, like actually taking the characters in different directions and like challenging their worldview via the status quo.
It also would have been a nice bit of symmetry because '09, everybody was coming together. And in this one, everybody's getting ripped apart. Both physically and literally, and metaphorically.
It's true, and that is a good way to like look at it because they are like they finally got the band together and now they're split up and
like they're everybody's at the top of their game, and then they come up against something that there is no way you could have possibly prepared for it.
Yeah, and they do some really interesting pairings, like Kirk and Chekhov is a lot more fun, and than I would have.
I loved that pairing. The pairing that worked. I think it's the weakest pairing, but I really like what it does for them is Uhura and Sulu. But it puts them in the position to where they have to face off against Krall, where they do well. They give it the best shot, but Krall is not. Yeah. They are not prepared for him.
Yeah, I was thinking about their arc and their pairing, and thinking about it as like it's like a drama of competency. So a lot of obviously a lot of fiction draws its drama from the inadequacies of characters. Like they find where character flaws are, and they create points of tension naturally as a result of that, and they rub the characters together to create that tension in a story. And in this one, it's like not at all. Like they're competent, they're good at their jobs, they know what they're doing. They're just in a fish out of water story situation where they're trying to get out, and the only conflict doesn't come from within, it comes from without, which is really good for Star Trek, particularly with like the theme of this story being that essentially diversity brings strength and unity brings strength.
And Krall's pointing out it. He's attacking that throughout the film, and I like that they've got the Commodore to set that up as well. As far as like, it's not just I'm not just sending a ship. I'm sending a crew, and you're getting to see that crew excel. Even though yes, there's moments that they get their butt handed to them, lose the ship, and continuously you're like
I want to talk about Krall at some point, but we'll
talk. We'll have a whole thing about Krall.
But, if the crew wasn't good, getting split up that way, they each would have got individually crushed. And yeah, they have their setbacks, but they don't get. None of them really lose. Like once Kirk's able to enact his plan, everyone's ready to go. Yeah, go ahead.
Like Sulu and Uhura, they are forced to end, or a member of their crew is forced to give up the whatever it's called, the golden suitcase.
The Marcellus Wallace, yes.
Yeah, they're forced to give it up, and like a crew member dies, but like they keep the rest of the crew together and alive, which in those or most of the crew, which in those
circumstances, in the engineering section.
Well, no, and Kroll like eats 2 of them, like.
He racks up a good body count in this movie.
Yeah, like so, and like they're in a position to where when Kirk comes, they can actually like GTFO.
Right. That was great, and I loved how they're split up, like how each one of them gets split up during the sequence where the Enterprise is getting destroyed,
and like they do a really good job of splitting them up. Like it makes perfect sense why the people who are together are together.
And it's like, and it also keeps geographically consistent with the way everything is. It's not edited in a weird way, so you don't know where everything is going on and who's doing what and why they're there. Everything is in nice, clear, clean shots. It's also creative. Like I really enjoy the fact that Scotty escapes on one of the like leftover cryotubes from Into Darkness. Like he somehow find one of the cryotube torpedoes and he's just in a workshop for some reason. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna buy, go.
Like I really hope this works.
Yeah.
But it also tracks why he didn't get captured. I like that it gets set up because the first missile they shoot, the swarm just like opens up, lets it pass by. And then everything else that was an escape pod was getting snatched and pulled out. So then they show that again when his goes through.
To them, it would have looked like a weapon. So
we're not touching that. We're gonna let it go right. It's like nice.
Yeah, it's like really nice, subtle, like just solid nuts and bolts filmmaking. Like it does a good job.
Like everything makes sense. Like, and I know that's kind of for the most part. Yeah.
Man, that's a low bar, but
it's a low bar, but man, it's surprising how many of these movies don't.
Stairs and generations.
I was reading on Twitter the other day. People were talking about I haven't watched the commentary on Generations, and I need to now because apparently it is Brandon Braga and Ronald D. Moore on the commentary just talking about the writing process of the movie the whole time and them basically just dumping on themselves in the past and talking about how all the ways in which the movie doesn't work and ideas that they had thought of that didn't end up making it in, and I need to really watch it.
Like, hey, pass Ronald D. Moore, you idiot. feel bad. Present day Ronald D. Moore, probably.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out for me is honestly Jayla. So we get a whole new character, and honestly, like there are not very many franchises that I think can add a like new supporting character into a pre-existing cast in a way that is seamless and in a way that you don't find these new characters annoying. And Star Trek has like rarely ever done it. The only time I could think of that they did it really was with Savick in 2, and then in Star Trek 6 with Valeris. And that's it.
I think 2 honorable mentions to that I would add, which it's really weird because it always seems to be a female character, is Voyage Home, the mom from Seventh Heaven.
Oh, yeah.
And First Contact, Lily.
Alfred Woodard's character.
It is weird that it always seems to be women, but I guess when the main cast is male heavy, it makes sense you would want to have.
I actually think that tracks well.
And all of them are like really weird fish out of water characters, with the exception of Savick. Savick is being the most like in-universe normal one.
It's supposed to be a little bit more fish out of water, but that got cut because she's supposed to be half Vulcan. She's supposed to be half Vulcan, half Romulan.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways.
So, but yeah, I really like Jayla, and I would have no problems if she was like if they do make another new Trek film. I would love to see her back.
Yeah.
I also think she looks really interesting. Like I always hate how Star Trek adds infinite amounts of aliens. Because at a certain point, it starts to become insane how many...
Kind of gets some diminishing returns.
Yeah,
I can't keep track of everything.
If you're going to make a new alien, make them look cool and very distinctive. And...
Well, I mean, I think they do that, yeah. I was just going to say, I think they accomplished that. Yeah.
I mean, is there simplicity in that? It's like, yeah, it's another humanoid, but it's like white skin and you got some black tattoo art. It's like, that's a much simpler thing to just key in on.
I feel like there's like a headpiece, and they got the hair, and then like maybe some prosthetic teeth, but that's about it. It's also like, especially with like Discovery, it's just really nice to have an alien makeup design that isn't so prosthetic heavy that you can't make out the natural shape of the actor's face. And you're able to, with Jayla, like she's able to act through it very well because it's not really confining her range of motion very much. And so she's able to emote very well and stuff.
Kyle, you might. Occasionally, I'll see a tweet from Mary Shalufo. And occasionally I'm like, I know this person's related to Star Trek, but like, what is it? I can't remember what they're the head Klingon. I can't remember what their name is. But, yeah, go look at a picture of Mary Shalufo and then see if Klingon pops in your head at all. Because
well, it's the same thing with like what's his name? It's why he's been able to do like 3 characters. Completely blanking.
I know Zevran Cochrane, the actor that played Zevran Cochrane, has been so many different characters in Star Trek. Obviously,
Kenneth Mitchell.
Jeffrey Combs has done a ton of Star Trek characters.
Yeah, so like it's like Kenneth Mitchell. He's played 3 different characters in Star Trek, and each season of Star Trek, he's played a different character. But you wouldn't know because he played Cole in season 1, and he played Cole Shaw in season 2, which was Cole's father, and then he plays the Orion, the human scientist who's working for the Orions in season 3.
Of what? What show?
Discovery. So in the back half of season 3, when they take over the Discovery, the Orion bad guy lady.
Oh, okay, again, and the human like lackey who. Okay, and he was in 2 other seasons.
Yes, he plays
the guy in the floaty chair. Okay.
Yeah, he was like the main bad guy in season 1 of Discovery. Like he was the guy who took over the Klingons during the war, with the red paint on his face.
That dude has range.
He does. Then, but there's like tons of stuff like that. Like lots of actors who play the aliens. Like if I see them out of their makeup in Discovery, I have no idea what they look like. So, it's interesting. I just like being able to like recognize the actors in out of makeup.
That makes sense. And like this movie, I forget how much I like it every time. Like it's not for some reason it doesn't really like stick to me, but like it just doesn't. Like it's a movie that like I've watched it several times now, but I would almost forget to own it. Like it is it just doesn't stick in my mind for some reason, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's a great movie.
Paramount got to you too. That's what the problem is.
Apparently, but also like sometimes like I have beard and hair blindness. Like if you change your beard and hair enough, I won't recognize you, and that's happened to me several times. So,
Yeah.
Well, another thing that I found was a real standout for this was the like aesthetics and the production design for the movie. So not just in the way of like, of course, the aliens look good and the sets look good, but just like the subtle changes that they make to the Starship Genius Bar, or the Apple ship of space or whatever. It's the Apple Store look, but like they do like some really subtle touches that makes it feel more homey in the opening sequence. Like it actually kind of doesn't feel like it just feels better. It feels more comforting. It feels more like something like the Enterprise D.
It feels like a place people live in and not a place people work in.
Yeah.
And I think that's helped by the montage and things that are going on in there. But,
yeah, they even got like a little red carpeting now in the ship. It's like it's great.
And you're not being blinded every time you walk.
And I like obviously with a TV show you could do this more, but I do love the constant like little interpersonal squabbles and joys that happen when you have a group of like 400 people living on a ship without really being able to contact anybody else for 5 years. Like, things are going to get weird. It's going to happen.
And, but like, another thing I really liked is just like, say, the continuity. So so the Franklin, like as far as the production design goes, so the Franklin obviously is an NX ship, like we've discussed. It's an older ship to the NX-01 Enterprise, which was the first Warp 5 ship. This is the first Warp 4 ship. So it like looks like it's even older to an extent than the NX-01. It's clunkier, it's less refined, but it still clearly has some of the visual markers that, say, the Kelvin did in the first one. It was clearly inspired by the NX-01. Yeah, it's like it's like a Abrams version of it because it's got got like the thick nacelles, but it's still clearly like the single saucer with the nacelles coming out of that, and in just the saucer, there's no secondary hole. If you look in like some other little subtle touches, is like in the video that they show of like the crew of the Franklin, everybody is wearing jumpsuits like the NX-01 jumpsuits, but they're a little bit newer because it's supposed to be post Romulan War when that part's taking place. And there's very clearly a shuttle pod that's landing, like an NX-01 shuttle pod, like the exact same model. Like little touches like that.
That was so nice. I got the dumbest grin on my face when I watched it.
And there's not quite, but like Archer's ready table. I like that they had that. Theirs is more like the circular table, kind of like marrying the ready room aspects, but it's still kind of small and tucked off into like another little room, whereas there's a little more direct access on the NX-01. So, but nice little.
It's not hard necessarily. It just requires like a thoughtfulness, and when you look into the production stuff, that thoughtfulness is definitely there because, like, of course, Justin Lin is a Trekkie. Then Simon Pegg, who wrote this film, he was like emailing and consulting with editors at Memory Alpha the whole time in the production to try to figure out like, okay, so what type of weapons does an NX class like have? Like, what are the weapons that they have? Like, how are their transporters used? Like just research.
Well, transporters at this time period were not really used a lot for personnel. They were usually only used for cargo. Blah 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And why can't more movies do this?
Yeah, because like they do it in a way that's like subtle and doesn't really get in the way, but it speaks to the history of it. It gives it that texture.
And it's very obvious to me that Lin was like, okay, I want to use, like, it really does feel like Lin said, I know what I want my villain to be. I want it to be a human from Earth before the Federation came, and I wanted to be like a warrior type person. And like I feel like Simon Pegg went, let me think about that, and emailed Memory Allen. They're like, maybe a Mako? And then like told them the definition of a Mako, and they're like, that's perfect! Would it make sense that he would be a captain? Yeah, because they had to fold it in when the Federation was founded. Perfect! And I feel like that was the conversation, and that's not hard to do, guys.
It's not.
Like,
but I think writers can get arrogant, and they think they can just pull it completely out of themselves. Or you don't have the people in the room. You know, like if you don't have the people in the room, go get people in that room that can help you out. Ergo, they reached out to Memory Alpha and got the things they need. You know,
freaking email them. Like those like nerds like that will pay you to help write these movies.
Or better yet, hire them as your writing assistants.
Like just the whole thing. Hire them as writing assistants. Yeah. Like
there are nerds that exist that know your stuff better than you do. It is okay. It is like you don't have to be offended by that.
And that's one of the things that's interesting about, say, and this is just sort of a separate thing, but like, so one of the people I follow on Twitter, Bitter Script Reader.
Hi, Auto Racing, by the way.
He's a big Trek fan, and he uses he talks about Star Trek a lot, which is one of the reasons I started following him. But he was the writing assistant for season 1 of Superman and Lois, and of course the reason he was brought in was because he's just a gigantic like Superman and Lois nerd. So he had like all that continuity in his head that they needed when they're talking about things that have or haven't been done with Superman or in Lois and how those stories played out. Like he knew all that stuff. So it's really important to have that context so you can know how you can play with the idea, or if you're like just redoing something that was done better before. So yeah, it's neat.
And like this movie makes me angry though. Not like just because like why. Beyond makes me really angry specifically at Discovery.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like, why couldn't you just do that? Why couldn't you just hire Memory Alpha to assist you in the writing process to make the story you want? Also make like what?
But it goes okay, because I think I can say this super quick so that we don't go into a tangent. So Kyle, feel free to.
Yeah, and I am sorry for
I'll pull you out if it's
gotcha. Because it was a distinction I wanted to make because I know we just talked about fans coming in to write, which I think I could hear every screenwriter rolling their eyes a little bit at that. And given the toxicity that's happened online as far as Kathleen Kennedy, you just kind of pick your producer right now who's kind of stepped in it a little bit regarding some of the things they've done, whether it be a cherished Star Wars franchise or like how Discovery has gone. Us saying that could be seen as like saying that like new things can't happen or like they need to be completely removed or anything like that. It's not what any of us are saying. But there is an earnestness that can come from interacting with the fan base, and I think there's also a like reality that needs to be said. It's like fans can be insufferable, fans can be irrational as well, to the point that where it does you do it beyond, and then it still doesn't resonate as well. But I think
also you have to market that movie if you want it to resonate.
Yeah.
So I think there's like some fine balances of that resonating, and then when have you gone too far and not really taken into consideration what fans appreciate or don't have a really good grasp of that.
There's also a big difference between like letting just randos off the street or on the internet and and getting people who actually actively curate
someone
a Star Trek Wikipedia.
Well, and also it's different when it's like someone who's also like an actual qualified like screenwriter or filmmaker, like those people know how to balance their fandom, or at least for the most part, have an understanding of how to balance their fandom versus how to balance the needs of a story.
And what I would say, if it's not necessarily a counterpoint, but if you're wanting to do a new storyline within an existing franchise, you don't get to act like you're remaking everything. You're part of an existing universe. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. When you do that, all you do is alienate your old fans while simultaneously probably making, like, I can't think of a situation where somebody completely ignored the existing fandom and completely ignored the existing canon and just did whatever, like maybe Thor Ragnarok. Like,
well, no, if anything, that's going more Kirby.
Yeah,
it's ignoring their missteps in the MCU, but
exactly,
to me, that's going more Kirby. They're like, nah, let's get more weird space stuff.
And if you are going to ignore an existing an existing body of lore and existing stuff, then just make a new thing. Just do something new. Do not go, I want to tell this unique story in the franchise and ignore everything that has ever happened within that franchise.
Yeah, because even like Battlestar Galactica, the 2003 series, like radically divergent from the original series, but they also they pulled a lot from the original series and twisted and changed it around and did new and interesting things with it.
And specifically, the actor from the series from the original series who played Starbuck, I forget his first name.
No, he didn't play Starbuck. He played Adama. He played
Adama. Yeah.
Richard Hatch.
Richard Hatch. I couldn't remember his first name. He was integrally involved in the new show.
And they did that intentionally because he was kind of like the Rod. I mean, he wasn't an equivalent to Roddenberry, but he was like a really big booster of the original series.
Because he had been trying to get his own off the ground for a long time before Ronald Moore's reimagining happened.
And he firmly believed that there was still an audience for Battlestar and that the show could be extremely good.
I mean, you can make the argument if he hadn't been doing the work he'd been doing at conventions.
I don't think it would have succeeded.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have succeeded as well as it did had he not been able to graft the old and the new together. And Beyond, I think, is the perfect. It does it better than Star Trek 09 in doing that.
Yeah, it doesn't almost willfully tongue in cheek chuck it out the window, because that is something that always pissed me off about Abrams, is that I never really trusted him with the franchise. It never really felt like he respected it. It never really felt like he understood what Star Trek was about and what made it tick. He obviously knows how to make a fun action movie, but I just don't fundamentally think he was right for the property. He just didn't understand how it works, and
didn't care to learn. And I think you could absolutely bring in a director who has never touched Star Trek, but as long as they're okay, this is an existing universe, this is an existing thing, and respect that, and want to actually okay, let's see. These are the ideas I'm playing around with. Can I build off of something that's already been done?
Yeah, if you approach anything, I personally think if you approach anything from with a measure of respect and intentionality to it, then you're going to you're going to probably end up better than if you come up to something dismissively, which is the way I felt 09 approached Star Trek in a lot of ways. In some ways, rightfully so, but in other ways, not. But in speaking of that marriage between old Trek and new Trek, I to piggyback off that, I really think that was the one takeaway from this movie, that it really did a good job of pairing old Trek and new Trek together and stitching them away in a cohesive whole that I really think could, if people could do it, show how they could make these movies successful in the future. And I think for me, the personal symbology of that is the big sequence at the end, where you are essentially having a briefing room scene where everybody is sitting and figuring out how they're going to handle the swarm. and they're running through all the technobabble to try to figure out how they're going to do this, and they're running through their expertises, and they're trying to discuss it, and then it ends up just being like blasting sabotage over radio to blow up the swarm. And it's just one of the most magnificently stupid like climax things, but I love it so much because
I was going to say, because that is where they delve into the technobabble the most. But I will grant it that, because the rest of the movie hasn't really been that. So I was like, if this is the spot where we need to have the obligatory, fine, it's okay. You're gonna do what to blast to disorient the? Okay, fine, fine, cool.
It's not important. It's not important.
Not important. And visually, it's
the beats and shouting.
Yeah. And it's a very pretty movie. Like, we haven't said it yet, but it needs to be said. It's a very pretty and like every set is very interesting looking, and really like I think the Yorktown is stupid in the way it is structured, but it looks beautiful. It looks absolutely beautiful.
Okay, am I the only one that's a little worried about how ships coming in and out of it? Like,
yeah,
no, that was nonsense. That was absolutely nonsense.
I mean, it is. It might. I guess it's kind of economical depending on where their bays are. Maybe there's like a more internal bay closer to the center of it. So
the
like,
only way I could
that
think that makes sense. The only way that makes sense to me is if there's actually a shipyard within the Yorktown, which then I'm like, okay, that does make sense. But it's still weird. It's still kind of confusing.
The one way that it makes sense to me is that each one of those spires that comes out, if each one of those, I don't know how many of those actually serve as a ship servicing bay, but so many of those could, like, essentially, you could create like a conveyor belt of ship stuff. I don't know. It was an interesting take. I don't know if I'm sold on it, but it's just nice to see them like giving me something new that's not just the standard Starbase model that we've seen since like 1984 or 83 or whatever. Search for Spock.
Goodness, it has been the same one for.
And that's why, like, I don't necessarily like the Yorktown's design, but I'm not going to complain about it either, because it's pretty and it is interesting and it's distinctive, and they make it. It makes sense. Like, it makes sense that this universe, that this iteration of Trek would have a giant snow globe in space as a starbase.
Yeah, and I think, like, and the thing that makes it work for me isn't so much the mechanical nature of how it works. It's more of its thematic statement. Like, so one, they can't put it on a planet because they didn't want to show any favorability to any other Federation stuff. So mechanical world building perspective, check. That's a good reasoning to have it exist even. Two, it shows like their impossible future utopia technology and how advanced and utopic it is, because everybody is living here together and they're getting along and they're existing and coexisting all together. So another world building and thematic lead into their check. Then you've got the thematic aspect that it really leans into, which is it's almost like the hubris of the Federation. You've got this giant, ornate, absolutely expensive space station that is effectively a bubble in space. Like, it is
on the edge of the frontier.
On the edge of the frontier, that really, it's like you pop one hole in that balloon and all the air is coming out. You know, it's like and it's like, so it all sort of, I think, thematically like ties into like what is happening in the story. I don't know if they make that land, but I think that it's there at least. It's trying.
I like it more when it's intentional hubris, like that I like that. I do like that.
Is that the way you phrase that hit me really well.
And that has been a common theme several times in several of the best Federation storylines, where like, we've mastered everything, we've figured it all out. Like, there is no boundary too far, there is no foe too strong. that we can't come together. And you're like, oh, you have no idea what's coming. You have no idea what's out here.
And I think that leads to Crawl or Edison, because that is his thing. It's this is where the frontier pushes back, or he's learned that lesson. He's learned that there is a hubris to the Federation and what we are and what we do, or at least the way he perceives it. There is a hubris to what the Federation is and what it does, and where it can fail us because of that hubris.
Two things. First, just to introduce, Crawl is our big bad guy. He's played by Idris Elba, who has that perfect menacing voice that he can.
Wonderful.
That he
His
can
performance
do.
is really different and weird in this movie, and I love it.
It is really weird, and I'm kind of here for it. But
he's the first alien that's actually felt like an alien in the entire, in any of the movies we've seen.
Which is ironic because he's not an alien.
It's true.
But so Crawl is just this walking, talking embodiment of discovery is not always a good thing.
What?
He's that Starfleet captain who went through a stellar mishap. He's the captain of the Yamato. He's that other captain that always shows up in these Star Trek things. Mm-hmm. That's like the warning message to underline the danger of space. And
his internal resentment. He feels abandoned by the Federation. Not only that, but the very concept of the Federation is the reason why he was abandoned. There's no place for men like you in the Federation. We don't need warriors. So you are expendable by design. And so you had to leave me behind to get your utopia. And screw you. Even though that's not really how it happened, he was flung to the edge of nowhere where no one could ever have found him. But Crawl's also, and this is me talking, this is not, Crawl is full of crap for one reason. He's like, togetherness is what is your weakness. Unity is your weakness. One, you're using alien technology. You are, by very design, using what others have done before you. You didn't do any of this. You didn't find any of this. You just found it. Two, the weapon you use is 1,000 tiny drones that are only powerful when working together. So, I don't know if that was intentional, that Crawl is full of crap, and it's incredibly obvious that Crawl is full of crap, so I don't know if it's to interpret that Crawl knows he's lying and is just doing this because he's enraged beyond all imagining of what happened to him, or if he is just completely unhinged.
I could posit a third. It could be more specific to Starfleet, and saying that what you believe you have is fake. It's not real. It's not about his togetherness. I don't think he means necessarily the concept of togetherness. I think he could say, but the unity you think you've gained by being together as a body of nations or a body of aliens in different groups, that's fake. It's not really giving you what you think that it is, which would make sense from someone like him who felt like he's been hung out to dry. So I think you're right if it's just the concept, but I think it's a little more specific to Starfleet.
Yeah, and it's there's that jab at the end where he's talking about having to break bread with his enemies. It's that idea that, and this is where I don't think I think there's a lot of really great stuff about Crawl, but I don't think it lands quite, because they never really, because I feel like to make it land, you need to have one of two things. You need to establish either Crawl was a true believer who's become disenchanted, or he was always a secret fascist. It's one of the two. He can't be both. And it feels like they play around with him being both, and it makes his motivations inconsistent.
And I think that goes to Trevor's point, is that even though I gave a third, it's still not clear. It's not clear enough to like just completely discount the other two.
My own personal headcanon is just that he feels so completely betrayed by Starfleet, by everything that they stand for. Like personally, not in an ideological sense. This is not he says he's motivated by ideology, but I don't think he is. I think he is motivated purely by you ruined my life. You destroyed everything that I held up, and then you built a monument to it. Yep. So I'm going to kill all of you.
And I think that's it. I think,
I think that has just fused to every ounce of his mind, and he is an unhinged lunatic for that. Like in a good sense, good in an interesting sense, like that.
Yeah.
And he will say whatever he has to say to hurt you.
To, I guess a point to Idris Elba's performance, though. Did it seem, and maybe let me know if y'all saw this as well, did it seem like, because when he heard his name, he seemed like he was thrown off.
Man,
like he is. So now I'm thinking, so when I was rewatching it today, I was thinking back to when he started his campaign. It felt like he'd forgotten why not the why. Like the why was still in there. Like that why was very consistent.
He literally forgot who he was.
And so I think that could also speak to why even what he's saying doesn't quite line up. But that core hurt is still there, and that's what's driving. Yeah. So he's like, no, screw you. This is the object of what I'm going to destroy. Boom, boom, boom. So that was always there. But I am Edison, and this is the reason that I am doing that. That got really just go ahead, Kyle.
My tinfoil hat theory. So this movie went through major reshoots as it was going through production. Now every movie goes through reshoots, but they even added cast members during these reshoots. So like all of the things with Suresh Ashkalu were added in the reshoots. So that none of that was in the original stuff. So that basically the bulk of the establishing Kirk's arc was done in reshoots.
Wow.
With that being said, that makes me think that because so it's two things that make me think this. So one, that piece, and then two, the editing in this movie is very good, and the editing in the final climax of this movie is notedly bad. The geography of a lot of the action in the box stuff with Kirk and Krall, I think, is very bad. There are several notable segments in which there's like cutaways from Kirk when Kirk says lines that are important, which means that those lines were either added in ADR or they weren't captured in the shoots. And they were probably added in ADR anyways, whether they were captured there or not. But there's like very important things that are happening on the screen that we're not really getting a full picture of. And all of it has to do with this aspect of the story of like, what is Krall's motivation and how does it connect to Kirk's theme? Which of course, Kirk's theme is the idea of he's lost. He's a captain of the starship and he doesn't really know who he is anymore. And in the same way, Krall is lost as well, and he doesn't know who he is anymore. And there's that moment where he hears his name and it throws him off. And then just before he tries to stab Kirk, he looks at this piece of broken glass and sees a picture of himself. And then, of course, he grabs it and tries to kill Kirk. I'm positive that had to have been added after in the reshoots, because the way that plays out up until that moment, it makes me think Krall's going to turn. He's going to have a redemption story. Yeah. He's going to see himself in the glass, and he's going to go, Kirk, you got to go. I'm going to fix this and stop whatever the thing is. And then he dies by the thing. Like he takes the thing and he does the thing, and then he saves everybody. And I'm convinced that that's the way that was supposed to play it out. But for whatever reason, they decided to redo it. Because I think that's what it is. I think Edison is a misguided idealist, or a whatever I said before. He's an idealist who's lost his way, who got lost and blamed the Federation and projected all of that onto them, and he festered in it. as opposed to being a secret fascist, which is also a compelling story, but is not the story that this movie is trying to tell, I think. But I don't think they make it land because that last bit is so choppy. And honestly, I feel like we needed to know that he was Edison earlier in the movie to make it work.
I agree. It's an interesting twist, but it doesn't. That aspect of Crawl doesn't land. But you have to have Crawl be Edison. Otherwise, everything he's doing does not make sense.
100%.
It's like, how did you get access? Like, who are you? Who?
There is one way in which it makes sense, and this is where I think it's actually really interesting to compare this to Star Trek Discovery, because if Krall were not human, he was just some alien on the frontier, this could take it into an interesting, like, anti-colonialist perspective, in the same way that the Klingons served as antagonists in Season 1 of Discovery, because T'Kuvma's whole thing was that the Federation are really just colonizers. They're showing up with their happy promises and their utopia, and they're going to make us soft, and they're going to make us weak, and they're going to take away all the things that make us uniquely us.
Violent, sociopathic murderers.
Well, and really, we know that that's not what makes the Klingons who they are. But it's an interesting conflict, and they could have went that direction in this movie too, I think, but they don't, obviously.
And this is kind of an issue I have with all Star Trek movies that do this, but it's part of a broader issue. And it's not something that I'm like, but I don't like it when they create a new villainous race, and I don't like it when they make it just another a member of Starfleet personnel. It feels very lazy. This movie makes it work. It works in this movie, but as a general rule, it's something I don't like it when they do, and I wish they wouldn't do it. You're in a gigantic universe with plenty of pre-existing, very terrible, terrible people. Use one of them.
Villain question.
Mm-hmm.
This could have a couple phases. So for the new Trek movies, is this the best villain?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the most coherent.
Yep.
Okay. Of recent Trek, so that would include movies and shows, do we also think this is the best villain?
Yes. The only other one who would rival it, if you count her as a villain, is the Empress. That is the only other of Discovery era and new Trek that I would put on the same level. Actually, she's better, but Krall is. Beyond that, none of the other villains in Discovery. I mean, the Packlids are incredible as villains, but
they're fun for the fact that they're a joke.
Exactly. They are simultaneously a threat and also a joke.
You blew up Packlid home.
You outsmarted Janeway.
But yeah, I mean, probably the only villain I can even think of that I even kind of liked in any of the new stuff is you had the Orion lady in season 3 of Discovery. She's not better than I wanted to say Nero. I don't think she's better than Edison, but she's still serviceable.
She has an interesting twist.
Yeah. And
because I especially love her when her and Admiral are trying to have it out and figure out how that would possibly work. Because you're kind of like, you might be legit. Okay,
he's got a point, but also the war crimes. Are we going to hold anyone responsible for the war crimes?
Yeah, it's. Man, she's just really bad. She's a really bad person. I couldn't trust anything she said.
She was a bad person that happened to be right.
And Lorca probably would have been a great villain if that had been given more time. Lorca.
Gorgia. Oh no, Lorca.
Lorca. Yeah,
but he doesn't.
Similar to Krall, they wait too long to give us that twist. literally the episode where he dies. Like, we get one episode with like proper mirror Lorca, and
then like they give all the good story beats that could have been Lorca's to the Empress.
it's just frustrating. And then I would say Larrick in Picard. He's the Romulan agent who's like on the Borg cube trying to get. But okay, so he's not like, I would say he's a good villain, but he's at least a layered character. So,
God, Kyle, you know how I feel about that show. I'd rather watch season 1 Discovery because at least
he's not.
I get mud in season 1 Discovery. You know, I'll rewatch that episode. And when we do Picard, people will be like, "Why is Kenneth not prepared for Picard?" Because I rewatched the mud episodes of Discovery. They're like, "That's not even number." I don't care.
Every episode
I'm not
of
rewatching Picard.
Every episode of Picard is worse than the last episode.
Really
Meaning every episode is the worst episode of the series.
Sorry, I did not mean to derail us.
You're good.
You queued me up.
But yeah, so as far as villains go, I think you're right. And like, because if I go back through the movies, I think you have to get to, I mean, me personally, I would say you have to get the shins on before you get one who's more compelling. But I can hear Trevor screaming on the inside.
Not screaming. It would. Let me see if I can.
Well, I keep forgetting all the Enterprise villains because Enterprise was after Nemesis.
Enterprise has some pretty good villains.
Enterprise has some good villains. Yeah.
All the Xindi reptilian leader is incredibly good.
I do really like Selleck.
Selleck. I love that Selleck does that seamless transition from like brutal antagonist to frenemy.
Yeah, seamlessly.
Doctor Soon.
Yep.
I really like Brent Spiner's run as a like villain who had like clear lines he wasn't willing to cross. You know, the random Klingons that show up that all want to murder and eat everyone.
So yeah, good stuff. There's others, but so at least since Enterprise, yeah, I'd say he's the best one. Hopefully, we get some good ones in Star Trek 4 or in any of these new seasons coming up. Only other thing I had to really say about this movie that just bothers me is that the Enterprise gets punked again. Like every one of these movies, it just gets wrecked. And it frustrates me because it's the hero ship and it's supposed to feel like home. And also it's supposed to be one of the most powerful ships in the fleet, and it just gets slapped around. Yeah, and so it feels like everybody keeps trying to recreate the moment in the really fantastic moment when the Enterprise blows up in 3.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that no one puts in the emotional work to make that work.
Yeah, like you gotta spend movie if you're gonna kill somebody to make it work, and the Enterprise is a character.
Yeah,
like you have to build it up, and you never built it up.
Like I know the Galactica is a different ship and universe, but I'm just gonna put that in my brain for a second.
It's a really great comparison, though.
It's like imagine trying to blow that up every single movie if we had Battlestar movies.
I mean, even when the Pegasus gets blown up, I'm like, and it was only there for half a season.
Because it's like, screw you! I'm gonna save my dad. Yeah, I know he said not to do it. I don't care. And you took out 3 ships, or it might have been 4, and it got lucky.
So the Galactica blew up one of the base stars, and then he blew up. He hit one base star, and then the wreckage of both of those ships went into another base star. Yeah. So, had the Galactica stayed, it probably could have won the engagement at that point.
Actually, there's if you all watch Space Doc on YouTube, they do battle breakdowns, and he did a really great battle breakdown on how
He gets so mad
Liadama is an idiot, and he just wasted a perfectly good capital ship.
Fantastic.
Because it can rebuild ships. It's got it can rebuild fight. It's like,
It has a factory.
No, why are you sacrificing the ship that could? But again, obviously, it's the name, and it's just the name.
Yeah,
of the ship. But
you can't get rid of the title ship.
It's great though, yeah. But like the moment in season 4 where like they've made the jump and they're like, she's got bad bones, Captain. Like that, where the Galactica is just rotting from its own age, and knowing that any jump could be the last one that breaks its spine. Like it's just like you got to build up to that. You got to give us the emotional weight, and this movie doesn't do that. And really, I feel like all the movies we barely got to know the ship, and then she's gone, and we got a new one, an A now that they'll probably delete and give us a B in 5. So
yeah.
anyways,
But it does make a great set piece
it does.
because when it's landed and then going back through, to your point about the geography, but it also just looks like a very interesting set piece there, being back, having to go back through the wreckage of the Enterprise.
Yeah, it was, and I was hoping that they were setting up that it was going to be okay, because like there's a part where they're overlooking it, and Kirk says, I bet she has a few surprises still left. And I'm like, oh man, it'd be great if it would be like the climax of the movie. They like pull the saucer all off of the planet and do the whole heroic thing, but with it instead of the Franklin. And they don't, and that's fine, I guess. But yeah, that's
that would have been better. Yeah. At least from the but I did. So point of order with Jayla, I was talking to so like. Kirk acts like the Franklin is his. And like I'm watching this and I'm like, so I don't know how salvager rights work, obviously, in the future. However, if somebody finds 100-year-old ship on a planet, it's theirs. And they've been living in it for years. Like, it's her ship at that point. And I don't know. Yeah, she literally calls it her house. And so, assuming that ship could even remotely move again after what they did to it, it's hers. So I'm just saying, if I were writing the next Star Trek movie, Jayla would be on the Franklin, be like, this is a terrible ship compared to everything else you people have. No wonder you let me keep it.
I don't know. To some extent, I feel like it should be like a museum ship. Because, I mean, it's an X ship.
Absolutely should be a museum ship.
It belongs in a museum!
Actually, it would actually be a good museum. Like, just the ship itself.
Oh, man. I bet they've never found the Franklin in the Prime universe.
Probably not. Maybe that would actually be if the Discovery crew finds Crawl. What? He seemed to live forever.
If you play Star Trek Fleet Command, I don't have any concept of the time in that. So yes, Discovery probably has ran into Crawl. I
mean, Fleet Command, Q broke the continuum, so
yeah, I think makes sense.
I don't know how that works, but
anyway, you can literally have multiple versions of the same Kirk running around in the same. What?
Is there anything else about this movie that we want to talk about?
Not particularly. Just standout performance, I think, goes to Idris Elba. He's great. He's so different from anything else he's done. He does a really good job of going from animalistic to relatably human. Mm-hmm. The way he does the facial tics and he's struggling with remembering how to speak English. Just great stuff.
He does crazy well.
Mm-hmm.
He does crazy well.
Score wise, I'm not saying this is a bad Michael Giacchino score. That's not really what I want to say.
Because those don't exist.
Those don't exist. But is it the most memorable? No.
I wonder if that's why I find this, because it's sad, but like Into Darkness sticks out more in my head than Beyond, and I wonder if that's because of the score.
Because I can
even though Into Darkness is a garbage movie. Because
I can distinctly remember, I guess you call it the Franklin or the Kroll sound when the Franklin's going for the Yorktown. I was like, okay, I can remember that, like the bum bum bum. But like, I was like, okay, got that one, but really doesn't permeate through the rest of the.
Yeah, and there's some bits in the fight with Kroll where it's a little bit like, it's not the same, but he's doing similar things to the like he's doing a similar thing to it. So
I did almost forget that.
There's one more thing I want to mention. I almost forgot about it. Kroll does have the best entrance of any villain in Star Trek. Like the way he has this like little tri-ship and it like burrows into it and he just
no regard for
out.
His men.
No regard.
You could have merged all of them standing there.
Well, it turns out they were all drones. He only had like two real.
There were only two real dudes who he cared about and who mattered. Everybody else was totally expendable. So, and I would just like show, and I feel like he practiced that in a mirror at some point. Like I feel like he has practiced that entrance, but he does. And there's another thing that, and it's probably my most controversial point. This is the only Star Trek movie that successfully recreates the Wrath of Khan. So hear me out.
I'm going to hear you out, but I've already chucked something at you, and I hope I get there in time so that you can stop this.
Kroll is an ancient enemy from the past, trapped on a planet with a burning need for revenge that surprises Kirk in every way imaginable. And so in that way, he is very much like Khan.
And he's looking for revenge upon the people who abandoned him.
And like Kroll is probably the best, like he's like the most Khan similar villain. Like he's not even human anymore. What?
I'm tired of comparing everything to Khan.
It's true, but it is hard there. So that's inevitable.
Pick a different nautical book. I don't know. Like, just come on.
Pick a different Horatio Hornblower. Yeah. Instead of being about Moby Dick, it could be Old Man in the Sea.
I saw that William Dafoe movie. That was based off of Old Man in the Sea, right?
I don't remember. But to your point,
I really couldn't figure out why people seem to like it so much. It seemed really messed up to me.
Okay. Anyways, I was going to say, to your point, I think that this movie feels like the most like an episode of the show, particularly the original series. Like, it feels like one of those episodes where they land on the planet and it turns out the Federation person turned everybody into Nazis. Or like that, what is it, Taste of Armageddon, where they've got the crazy Federation captain who's like mowing down like native peoples.
And it turns out that this was from a time period where a nuclear war had the Cold War gone nuclear.
Yeah,
this is a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Yeah, just starts
where like the Americans have become blonde-haired, blue-eyed Native Americans.
God, the ending. Okay, so that episode rules up until the last like 15 minutes, and then it's like,
and then they just ruin it all. They completely ruin it.
It's the weirdest thing, but yeah, it rules up until that point. Then it just gets really weird. And speaking of ruling, Bones has some really great lines. And I believe my favorite one is feels like my innards have been to a barn dance. He gets transported in on the Franklin. It's my favorite one. He has a lot of great ones, but that's my favorite.
I just like Spock called him by use his first name. I was like, yeah, I need to really draw attention to this. Like, no, I need you to really hear me. It's like, I've always cared, Leonard.
He's just poor Spock, and I feel Spock in all three of these movies is the one that apparently gets it the worst, except for Pike.
Yeah,
Pike's not in this movie, so because Pike's not in it, yeah, because he's got a big case of the deadsies.
Yeah, I think that's a wrap. We've covered everything we can cover about this. So if any of you all disagree with us or think that we forgot something, feel free to hit us up on Twitter at Redshirt Rejects, or I guess in any of our chats or comment sections on
We got a
various
red shirt section on Discord. So
yeah.
And tune in 2 weeks from now when we will talk about because we made rankings. I think our Star Trek 3 episode we did rankings for every single movie.
Yeah,
our own personal rankings where we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the three eras of Trek and where Galaxy Quest fits in on that, and what each era seems to do right, and what did each era struggle with, and which era was the worst.
yeah. And to see where our list changed.
Yes.
We might have
I know my list has changed.
I know my list has changed. Yeah, it's definitely changed, which is impressive. I didn't know it would. And where can people find our Discord?
Yeah, it's on our
Discord.
Yeah, you can search for Nerd Union on Discord and find it. Yeah.
I mean, people don't know how to do that.
You're right. That's some people.
No, he's right. I was just being unhelpful.
Okay, well, thank you for doing that. So anyways, so yeah, if you want to check us out at all those various places. We have been Redshirt Rejects. And, I guess live long and prosper.
May the force be with you.
Get out.
Fear is the mind killer.
Honestly, that is my new favorite sci-fi reference. Is Fear is the Mind Killer.
My favorite sci-fi reference is Desert Power.
He's really emphatic about it.
He's
not wrong. He's not wrong.
So I just love how excited he is. He's like a kid with a new toy.
We're gonna be the Emperor with desert power.
Although honestly,